Grettir'S SAGA Ásmundarsonar. Grettir'S SAGA. Chapter 20. How Thorfinn met Grettir at Ramsey again. After Yule, Thorfinn made ready for coming home, and he let those folk go with good gifts whom he had bidden to his feast. Now he fares with his following till he comes hard by his boat stands. They saw a ship lying on the strand, and soon knew it for Thorfinn's bark, the big one. Now Thorfinn had as yet no news of the Vikings. He bade his men hasten landward, for I fear, he said, that friends have not been at work here. Thorfinn was the first to step ashore before his men, and there he went up to the boat stand. He saw a keel standing there, and knew it for the berserker's ship. Then he said to his men, "My mind misgives me much that here things have come to pass, even such as I would have given the whole island, every whit of what I have herein, that they might never have happened." They asked why he spake thus. Then he said, "Here have come the Vikings, whom I know to be the worst of all in Norway, Thorir, Paunch, and Ogmund the Evil. In good sooth they will hardly have kept house happily for us, and in Icelander I have but little trust." Withal he spoke many things hereabout to his fellows. Now Grettir was at home, and so brought it about that folk were slow to go down to the shore, and said he did not care much if the good man Thorfinn had somewhat of a shake at what he saw before him. But when the mistress asked him leave to go, he said she should have never, well, as where she went, but that he himself should stir not with her. She ran swiftly to meet Thorfinn, and welcomed him cheerily. He was glad thereof, and said, "Praise be to God that I see thee whole and merry, and my daughter in likewise. But how far have you fared since I went from home?" She answered, "Things have turned out well, but we were near being overtaken by such a shame as we should never have had the dealing of, if thy winter guest had not happened upon us." Then Thorfinn spake, "Now shall we sit down, but do thou tell us these tidings." Then she told all things plainly, even as they had come to pass, and praised greatly Grettir's stoutness and great daring. Meanwhile Thorfinn held his peace, but when she had made an end of her tale, he said, "How true is the saw, long it takes to try a man, but where's Grettir now?" The good wife said, "He is at home in the hall." Thereupon they went home to the farm. Thorfinn went up to Grettir and kissed him and thanked him with many fair words for the great heart which he had shown to him. "And I will say to thee what few say to their friends, that I would thou dost should be in need of men, that then thou mightest know if I were thee in a man's stead or not. Before you good deed I can never reward you unless you come to me in such trouble as need. But as to my abiding with me, it shall ever stand upon thee to when you will, and then shall be that the first of all of my men." Grettir bade him have much thank thereof, and quoth, he said, "This should I have taken even if thou hadst me proffer thereof before." Now Grettir sat there the winter over, and was in the closest friendship with Thorfinn, and for this deed he was now well renowned all over Norway, and there the most, where the berserks had erst wrought the greatest ill deeds. This spring Thorfinn asked Grettir what he was about to busy himself with. He said he would go north to Vogar, where this fair was. Thorfinn said there was ready for him money as much as he would. Grettir said that he needed no more money at the time than faring silver. Thorfinn said was full well due to him, and thereupon went with him to ship. Now he gave him the short sword, the good one, which Grettir bore as long as he lived, and the choicest of choice things it was. Withal Thorfinn bade Grettir come to him whenever he might need aid. But Grettir went north to Vogar, and many folk were there. Many men welcomed him there right heartily, who had not seen him before. for the sake of that great deed of prowess which he had done when he saw the Vikings. Many high-born men prayed him come to and abide with them, but he would fain go back to his friend Thorfinn. Now he took in a bark that was owned of a man hight Thorkel, who dwelt in Solt in Hålogaland, and was a high-born man. But when Grettir came to Thorkel, he welcomed him right heartily, and bade Grettir abide with him that winter, and laid many words thereto. This offer Grettir took, and was with Thorkel that winter in great joyance and fame. Chapter 21 of Grettir and Bjorn and the Bear. There was a man named Bjorn who was dwelling with Thorkel. He was a man of rash temper, of good birth, and somewhat akin to Thorkel. He was not well loved of men, for he would slander much those who were there with Thorkel, and in this wise he sent many away. Grettir and he had little to do together. Bjorn thought him of little worth weighed against himself, but Grettir was unyielding, so that things fell athwart between the two. Bjorn was a mightily boisterous man and made himself very big. Many young men got into fellowship with him in these things, and would stray abroad by night. Now it befell that early in winter a savage bear ran abroad from his winter lair, and got so grim that he spared neither man nor beast. Men thought he had been roused by the noise that Bjorn and his fellows had made. The brute got so hard to deal with that he tore down the herds of men, and Thorkel had the greatest hurt thereof, for he was the richest man in the neighborhood. Now one day Thorkel bade his men to follow him, and search for the lair of the bear. They found it in sheer sea rocks. There was a high rock and a cave before it down below, but only one track to go up to it. Under the cave were scarped rocks and a heap of stones down by the sea, and sure death it was to all who might fall down there. The bear lay in his lair by day, but went abroad as soon as night fell. No fold could keep sheep safe from him, nor could any dogs be set on him, and all this men thought the heaviest trouble. Bjorn, Thorkel's kinsman, said that the greatest part had been done, as the lair had been found. And now I shall try, said he, what sort of play we namesakes shall have together. Grettir made as if he knew not what Bjorn said on this matter. Now it happened always when men went to sleep at nights that Bjorn disappeared, and one night when Bjorn went to the lair, he was aware that the beast was there before him, and roaring savagely. Bjorn lay down in the track and had over him his shield, and was going to wait till the beast should stir abroad at his manor. Now the bear had an inkling of the man, and got somewhat slow to move off. Bjorn waxed very sleepy where he lay, and cannot wake up, and just at this time the beast betakes himself from his lair. Now he sees where the man lies, and hooking at him with his claw, he tears from him the shield and throws it down over the rocks. Bjorn started up suddenly awake, takes to his legs and runs home, and it was a near thing that the beast gat him not. This his fellows knew, for they had spies about Bjorn's ways. In the morning they found the shield and made the greatest jeering at all of this. At Yule Thorkel went himself, and 8 of them all together, and there was Grettir and Bjorn and other followers of Thorkel. Grettir had on a fur cloak, which he laid aside while they set at the beast. It was awkward for an onslaught there, for thereat could folk come out by spear thrusts, and all the spear points the bear turned off him with his teeth. Now Bjorn urged them on much to the onset, yet he himself went not so nigh as to run the risk of any hurt. Amid this, when men looked least for it, Bjorn suddenly seized Grettir's coat and cast it into the bear's lair. Now naught they could wreak on him, and had to go back when the day was far spent. But when Grettir was going, he misses his coat, and he could see that the bear has it cast under him. Then he said, "What man of you has wrought the jest of throwing my cloak in the lair?" Bjorn says, "He who is like to dare to own to it." Grettir answers, "I set no great store on such matters." Now they went on their way home, and when they had walked a while, the thong of Grettir's leggings broke. Thorkill bade them wait for him, but Grettir said there was no need of that. Then said Bjorn, "Ye need not think that Grettir will run away from his coat. He will have the honor all to himself, and will slay that beast all alone, wherefrom we have gone back all 8 of us. Thus would he be such as he said to be, but sluggishly, and now as he fared forth today." "I know not," said Thorkill, "how thou wilt fare in the end, but men of equal prowess I deem you not. Lay as few burdens on him as thou mayest, Bjorn." Bjorn said that neither of them should pick and choose words from out his mouth. Now when a hill's brow was between them, Grettir went back to the pass, for now there was no striving with others for the onset. He drew the sword, Yokel's gift, but had a loop over the handle of the short sword and slipped it up over his hand, and this he did in that he thought he could easier have it, as his will if he hand were loose. He went up into the pass forthwith, and when the beast saw man, it rushed against Grettir exceedingly fiercely, and smote at him with the paw, which was the furthest off from the rock. Grettir hewed against the blow with the sword, and therewith smote the paw above the claws, and took it clean off. Then the beast was fain to smite at Grettir with the paw that was whole, and dropped down therewith to the docked one, but it was shorter than he wotted of, and withal he tumbled into Grettir's arms. Now he griped at the beast between the ears and held him off, so that he got not at him to bite. And so Grettir himself says that herein he deemed he had the hardest trial of his strength, thus to hold the brute. But now as it struggled fiercely and the space was narrow, they both tumbled down over the rock. The beast was the heaviest of the two, and come down first upon the stone heap below, Grettir being the uppermost, and the beast was much mangled on its nether side. Now Grettir seized the short sword and thrust it into the heart of the bear, and that was his bane. Thereafter he went home, taking with him his cloak all tattered, and withal what he cut from the paw of the bear. Thorkill sat a-drinking when he came into the hall, and much men laughed at the rags of the cloak Grettir had cast over him. Now he threw onto the table what he had chopped off the paw. Then said Thorkill, "Where is now Bjorn my kinsman? Never did I see thy irons bite the like of this Bjorn, and my will it is that thou make Grettir a seemly offer to for the shame that thou hast wrought on him." Bjorn said that was like to be long about, and never shall I care whether he likes it well or ill. Then Grettir sang, "Oft the war god came to hall, frighted when no blood did fall. In the dusk whoever cried, on the bare last autumn tide. No man saw me sitting there, late at eve before the lair, yet the shaggy one today, from his den I drew away." "Sure enough," said Bjorn, "thou hast fared forth well today, and 2 tales thou tellest of us twain therefore, and well I know that thou hast had a good hit at me." Thorkill said, "I would, Grettir, that thou would not avenge thee on Bjorn, but for him I will give a full man-gild if thereby you may be friends." Bjorn said he might well turn his money to better account than to boot for this, and methinks it is wisest that in my dealings with Grettir, one oak should have what from the other it shaves. Grettir said that he should like that very well, but Thorkill said, "Yet I hope, Grettir, that thou wilt do this for my sake, not to do aught against Bjorn while ye are with me." "That shall be," said Grettir. Bjorn said he would walk fearless of Grettir wheresoever they might meet. Grettir smiled mockingly, but would not take boot for Bjorn, so there were he that winter through. Chapter 22 of the Slaying of Bjorn. In the spring Grettir went north to Vogar with Chapman. He and Thorkill parted in friendship, but Bjorn went west to England. It was the master of Thorkill's ship that went thither. Bjorn dwelt there about that summer and brought such things for Thorkill as he had given him word to get. But as the autumn wore on, he sailed from the west. Grettir was at Vogar till the fleet broke up. Then he sailed from the north with some chapmen until they came to a harbour at an island before the mouth of Firth called Garda, where they pitched their tents. Now when they were housed, a ship came sailing havenward from the south along the land. They soon saw that it was an England farer. She took the strand further out, and her crew went ashore. Grettir and his fellows went to meet them, but when they met, Grettir saw that Bjorn was among those men, and spake, "It is well that we have met here. Now we may take up our ancient quarrel, and now I will try which of us as twain may do the most." Bjorn said that was an old tale to him, but if there has been aught of such things between us, I will boot for it, so that thou mayst think myself will hold thereof. Then Grettir sang, "In hard strife I slew the bear, thereof many a man doth hear. Then the cloak I offered worn, by the beast to rags was torn. Thou, O braggart ring-bearer, wrought thou jest upon me there. Now thou payest for thy jest, not in words am I the best." Bjorn said that oft had greater matters than these been atoned for. Grettir said that few had chosen hitherto to strive to trip him up with spite and envy, nor ever had he taken fee for such, and still must matters fare in likewise. Know thou that we shall not both of us go hence whole men, if I may have my will, and a coward's name will I lay on thy back, if thou darest not to fight. Now Bjorn saw that it would not avail him to try to talk himself free, so he took his weapons and went to land. Then they ran one at the other and fought, but not long before Bjorn got sore wounded, and presently fell dead to the earth. But when Bjorn's fellows saw that, they went to their ship, and made off north along the land to meet Thorkel, and told him of this hap. He said it had not come to pass ere it might have been looked for. Soon after this Thorkel went south to Drontheim, and met there Earl Svein. Grettir went south to meet Mia after the slaying of Bjorn, and found his friend Thorfinn, and told him what had befallen. Thorfinn gave him good welcome, and said, "It is well now that thou art in need of a friend. With me shalt thou abide until these matters have come to an end." Grettir thanked him for his offer, and said he would take it now. Earl Svein was dwelling in Drontheim, and Stenka when he heard of Bjorn's slaying. At that time there was with him a man, Hiarandi, the brother of Bjorn, and he was the Earl's man. He was exceedingly angry when he heard of the slaying of Bjorn, and begged the Earl's aid in the matter, and the Earl gave him his word thereto. Then he sent men to Thorfinn, and summoned to him both him and Grettir. Thorfinn and Grettir made ready at once at the Earl's bidding to go north to Trondheim to meet him. Now the Earl held a council on the matter, and bade Hiarandi to be thereat. Hiarandi said he would not bring his brother to Perse, and I shall either fare in a likewise with him, or else wreak vengeance for him. Now when the matter was looked into, the Earl found that Bjorn had been guilty towards Grettir in many ways, and Thorfinn offered were-guilt, such as the Earl deemed might be befitting for Bjorn's kin to take, and thereon he had much to say on the freedom which Grettir had wrought for men north there in the land, when he slew the berserks, as has been said before. The Earl answered, "With much truth thou sayest this, Thorfinn. That was the greatest land-ridding, and good it seems to us to take were-guilt because of thy words, and withal Grettir is a man well renowned because of his strength and prowess." Hiarandi would not take the settlement, and they broke up the meeting. Thorfinn got his kinsman Bjorn to go about with Grettir day by day, for he knew that Hiarandi lay in wait for his life. Chapter 23. The Slaying of Hiarandi. It happened one day that Grettir and Arnbjorn were walking through some streets for their sport, that as they came past a certain court gate, a man bounded forth therefrom with an axe borne aloft, and drave it at Grettir with both hands. He was all unawares of this and walked on slowly. Arnbjorn caught timely sight of the man and seized Grettir and thrust him on so hard that he fell on his knee. The axe smote the shoulder blade and cut sideways out under the armpit, and a great wound it was. Grettir turned about nimbly and drew the short sword and saw that there was Hiarandi. Now the axe struck fast in the road, and it was slow work for Hiarandi to draw to him again, and in this very nick of time Grettir hewed at him, and the blow fell on the upper arm near the shoulder and cut it clean off. Then the fellows of Hiarandi rushed forth, 5 of them, and a fight forthwith befell, and speedy change happed there, for Grettir and Arnbjorn slew those who were with Hiarandi, all but one, who got off and forthwith went to the Earl to tell him these tidings. The Earl was exceedingly wroth when he heard of this, and the 2nd day thereafter he had a thing summoned. Then they, Thorfinn and Grettir, came both to the thing. The Earl put forth against Grettir the guilt for these manslaughters. He owned them all, and said he had to defend his hands. Whereof methinks I bear some marks on me, says Grettir, and surely I had found death if Arnbjorn had not saved me. The Earl answered that it was ill hap that Grettir was not slain. For many a man's bane wilt thou be if thou livest, Grettir. Then came to the Earl Bessi, son of Skald Torfa, a fellow and friend to Grettir. He and Thorfinn went before the Earl, and prayed him respite for Grettir, and offered that the Earl alone should doom in this matter, but that Grettir might have peace and love to dwell in the land. The Earl was slow to come to any settlement, but suffered himself to be led thereto because of their prayers. Their respite was granted to Grettir till the next spring. Still the Earl would not settle the peace till Gunnar, the brother of Bjorn and Hiarandi, was thereat. Now Gunnar was a court owner in Tunsberg. In the spring the Earl summoned Grettir and Thorfinn east to Tunsberg, for he would dwell there east while the most sail was thereat. Now they went east thither, and the Earl was before them in the town when they came. Here Grettir found his brother, Thorstein Dromund, who was fain of him and bade him abide with him. Thorstein was a court owner in the town. Grettir told him all about his matters, and Thorstein gave a good hearing thereto, but bade him beware of Gunnar, and so the spring wore on. Chapter 24 of the Slaying of Gunnar, and Grettir's strife with Earlsfine. Now Gunnar was in the town, and lay in wait for Grettir always and everywhere. It happened on a day that Grettir sat in a booth a-drinking, for he would not throw himself in Gunnar's way. But when he wotted of it least, the door was driven at, so that it broke asunder. 4 men all armed burst in, and there was Gunnar and his fellows. They set on Grettir, but he caught up his weapons which hung over him, and then drew back into the corner, whence he defended himself, having before him the shield, but dealing blows with the short sword, nor did they speed lucky with them. Now he smote at one of Gunnar's fellows, and more he needed not. Then he advanced forth on the floor, and therewith they were driven doorward through the booth, and there fell another man of Gunnar's. Then were Gunnar and his fellows fain of flight. One of them got to the door, struck his foot against the threshold, and lay there grovelling, and was slow in getting to his feet. Gunnar had his shield before him, and gave back before Grettir, but he set on him fiercely, and leaped up on the cross beam by the door. Now the hands of Gunnar and the shield were within the door, but Grettir dealt the blow down amidst Gunnar and the shield, and cut off both his hands by the wrist. And he fell aback out the door. Then Grettir dealt him his death blow. But in this nick of time got to his feet Gunnar's man, who had lain fallen a while, and he ran straightway to see the Earl, and tell him of these tidings. Earlsvine was wondrous wroth at this tale, and forthwith summoned a thing in the town. But when Thorfinn and Thorstein Dromund knew this, they brought together their kin and friends, and came thronging to the thing. Very cross-grained was the Earl, and it was no easy matter to come to speech with him. Thorfinn went up first before the Earl and said, "For this cause I am come hither, to offer thee peace and honor for these manslayings that Grettir has wrought. Thou alone shalt shape and settle all, if the man hath respite of his life." The Earl answered sore wroth, "Late wilt thou be loth to ask a respite for Grettir. But in my mind it is thou that has no good cause in court. He has now slain 3 brothers, one at the heels of the other, who were men so brave that they would none bear the other to purse. Now it will not avail thee, Thorfinn, to pray for Grettir, for I will not thus bring wrongs into the land so as to take boot for such unmeasured misdeeds." Then came forward Bessi, Skulltorfa's son, and prayed the Earl to take the offered settlement. Thereto he said, "I will give up my goods, for Grettir is a man of great kin, and a good friend of mine. Thou mayst well see, Lord, that it is better to respite one man's life, and to have therefore the thanks of many, thyself alone dooming the fines, than to break down thine own honor, and risk whether thou canst seize the man or not." The Earl answered, "Thou farest well herein, Bessi, and showest at all times that thou art a high-minded man. Still I am loath thus to break the laws of the land, giving respite to men of foredoomed lives." Then stepped forth Thorstein Dromund, and greeted the Earl, and made offers on Grettir's behalf, and laid thereto many fair words. The Earl asked for what cause he made offers to this man. Thorstein said that they were brothers. The Earl said that he had not known it before. "Now it is but the part of a man for thee to help him, but because we have made up our mind not to take money for these manslayings, we shall make all men of equal worth here, and Grettir's life will we have, whatsoever it shall cost, and whensoever chance shall serve." Thereat the Earl sprang up, and would listen in no wise to the offered atonements. Now Thorfinn and his folk went home to Thorstein's court and made ready. But when the Earl saw this, he bade all his men take weapons, and then he went thither with his folk in array. But before he came up, Thorfinn and his men ordered themselves for defense before the gate of the court. Foremost stood Thorfinn and Thorstein and Grettir and then Bessi, and each of them had a large following of men with him. The Earl bade them to give up Grettir, nor to bring themselves into an evil strait. They made the very same offer as before. The Earl would not hearken thereto. Then Thorfinn and Thorstein said the Earl should have more ado, and yet for the getting of Grettir's life. For one fate shall befall us all, and it will be said thou works hard for one man's life, if all have to be laid on earth therefore. The Earl said he should spare none of them, and now they were at the very point to fight. Then went to the Earl many men of good will, and prayed him not to push matters on to such great evils, and said they would have to pay heavily before all these were slain. The Earl found this ready to be wholesome, and began somewhat softened thereof. Thereafter they drew up an agreement to which Thorstein and Thorfinn were willing enough. Now that Grettir should have a respite of his life, the Earl spake, "Know ye, that though I deal by way of mean words with these manslayings at this time, yet I call this no settlement, but I am loath to fight against my own folk, though I have said that ye like little of me in this matter." Then said Thorfinn, "This is a greater honor for thee, Lord, for that thou alone wilt doom the wergild." Then the Earl said that Grettir should go in peace, as for him out to Iceland when ships fared out. If so they would, they said they would take this. They paid the Earl fines to his mind, and parted with him in little friendship. Grettir went with Thorfinn. He and his brother Thorstein parted fondly. Thorfinn got great fame for the aid he had given Grettir against such overwhelming power as he had to deal with. None of the men who had helped Grettir were ever after well loved of the Earl, save Bessi. So quoth Grettir, "To our helping came the great of name. Thorfinn was there, born rule to bear, what all bolts fell. into locks and into hell, cried out for my life in the Tunsberg strife. The Dromond fair of red seas was there, the stone of the bane of steel god's vein, from vilest kin my life to win, above all men he labored then. Then the king's folk would strike no stroke to win my head, so great grew dread, for the leopard came with the Byrnie's flame, and on Thought's wall should the bright fire fall. Grettir went back north with Thorfinn, and was with him till he got to his ship with chapmen who were bound out to Iceland. He gave him many fair gifts of raiment, and a fair-stained saddle and bridle fall. They parted in friendship, and Thorfinn bade him come to him whensoever he should come back to Norway. Chapter 25. The Slaying of Thorgils Magnusson. Ásmund the Grey-haired lived on at Bjarg while Grettir was abroad, and by that time he was thought to be the greatest of bonders in Midfirth. Thorkel Krafla died during those seasons that Grettir was out of Iceland. Thorvald Asgeirsson, famed then at the ridge in Waterdale, and waxed a great chief. He was the father of Dala, whom his Leif had to wife, he who afterwards was bishop at Skalholt. Ásmund had in Thorvald the greatest help in suits and in many other matters. At Ásmund's grew up a man named Thorgils, called Thorgils Magnusson, near akin to Ásmund. Thorgils was a man of great strength and gained much money by Ásmund's foresight. Ásmund bought for Thorgils the land at Brookmeet, and there he farmed. Thorgils was a great store-gatherer, and went a-searching to the strands every year. And there he got for himself whales and other gettings, and a stout-hearted man he was. In those days he was at his height, the waxing of the foster brothers, Thorgeir Halvason and Thormod Kolbawosk. They had a boat and went therein far and wide, and were not thought men of much even dealing. It chanced one summer that Thorgils Magnusson found a whale on the common driftlands, and forthwith he and his folk set about cutting it up. But when the foster brothers heard thereof, they went thither, and at first their talk had a likely lookout. Thorgils offered that they should have half their uncut whale, but they would have for themselves all the uncut, or else divide all into halves, both the cut and the uncut. Thorgils flatly refused to give up what was cut out of the whale, and thereat things grew hot between them, and forthwithal both sides caught up their weapons and fought. Thorgeir and Thorgils fought long together without either losing or gaining, and both were of the eagerest. Their strife was both fierce and long, but at the end of it was that Thorgils fell dead to earth before Thorgeir. But Thormod and the men of Thorgils fought in another place. Thormod had the best of the strife, and 3 of Thorgils' men fell before him. After the slaying of Thorgils, his folk went back east to Midfirth, and brought his dead body with them. Men thought that they had the greatest loss in him, but the foster brothers took all the whale to themselves. This meeting Thormod tells of the dropper that he made on Thorgeir dead. Ásmund the Grey-haired heard of the slaying of Thorgils' kinsman. He was suitor in the case for Thorgils' slaying, and he went and took witnesses to the mounds, and summoned the case before the All-Thing, for then this seemed to be the law, and the case here happened in another quarter. And so the time wears on. Chapter 26 of Thorstein Kugson, and the gathering of the blood suit for the slaying of Thorgils Magnusson. There was a man called Thorstein. He was the son of Thorkel Kug, the son of Thor the Yeller, the son of Olaf Phelan, the son of Thorstein the Red, and the son of Odd the deeply wealthy. The mother of Thorstein Kugson was Thurid, the daughter of Asgeir Madpate. Asgeir was father's brother of Ásmund the Grey-haired. Thorstein Kugson was suitor in the case about Thorgils Magnusson's slaying, along with Ásmund the Grey-haired, who now sent word to Thorstein that he should come to meet him. Thorstein was a great champion, and the wildest tempered of men. He went at once to meet his kinsman Ásmund, and they talked the blood suit over together. Thorstein was mightily wroth and said that no atonement should be for this, and said they had strength of kin enough to bring about for the slaying either outlawry or vengeance on men. Asmund said that he would follow him in whatsoever he would have done. They rode north to Thorvald, their kinsman, to pray his aid, and he quickly gave his word and said yea thereto. So they settled the suit against Thorgeir and Thormod. Then Thorstein rode home to his farmstead. He then farmed at Leaskoga and Hafsmate, Skeggi famed at Havn, and he also joined in the suit with Thorstein. Skeggi was the son of Thorarin Felsini, the son of Thord the Yeller. The mother of Skeggi was Frigerd, the daughter of Thord of Head. These had many men with them at the thing, and pushed their suit with great eagerness. Asmund the Thorvald rode from the north with 6 tens of men, and sat at Leaskoga many nights. Chapter 27. The Suit for the Slaying of Thorgils Maxson. A man named Thorgils abode at Reeknolls in those days. He was the son of Ari, the son of Mar, the son of Atli the Red, the son of Ulf the Squinter, who settled at Reekness. The mother of Thorgils Arison was Thorgerd, the daughter of Alfadales. Another daughter of Alf was Thorelf, mother of Thorgeir Havason. There had Thorgeir good kinship to trust in, for Thorgils was the greatest chief in the Westfirthers quarter. He was a man of such bountifulness that he gave food to any freeborn man as long as he would have it, and therefore there was at all times a throng of people at Reeknolls. Thus had Thorgils much renown of his housekeeping. He was a man withal of good will and foreknowledge. Thorgeir was with Thorgils in winter, but went to the strands in summer. After the slaying of Thorgils Maxson, Thorgeir went to Reeknolls and told Thorgils Arison these tidings. Thorgils said that he was ready to give him harbour with him, but methinks he says that they will be heavy in the suit, and I am loath to eke out the troubles. Now I shall send a man to Thorstein and bid Weregild for the slaying of Thorgils. But if he will not take atonement, I shall not defend the case stiffly. Thorgeir said he would trust to his foresight. In autumn, Thorgils sent a man to Thorstein Kugson to try settling the case, but he was cross-grained to deal with as to the taking of money for the blood suit of Thorgils Maxson. But about the other manslayings, he said he would do as wise men should urge him. Now when Thorgils heard this, he called Thorgeir to him for a talk, and asked him what kind of aid he now deemed meetest for him. Thorgeir said that it was most to his mind to go abroad if he should be outlawed. Thorgils said that he should be tried. A ship lay up North River in Bergfirth, and that keel Thorgils secretly paid faring for the foster brothers, and thus the winter passed. Thorgils heard that Ásmund and Thorstein drew together many men to the All-Thing, and sat in Leaskoga. He drew out the time of riding from home, for he would that Ásmund and Thorstein should have ridden by before him to the south, when he came from the west, and so it fell out. Thorgils rode south, and with him rode the foster brothers. In this ride Thorgeir killed Bundle Torfi of Marswell, and Skoof withal, and Bjarni and Dogdale. Thus they Thormund and Thorgeir's dropper. Mighty strife the warrior made when to earth was Maxson laid. Well the sword shower wrought he there, flesh the ravens got to tear. Then with Skoof and Bjarni fell, he was there the tale to tell. Seasted's rider took his way through the thickest of the fray. Thorgils settled the peace for the slaying of Skoof and Bjarni then and there in the dale, and delayed no longer than was will before. Thorgeir went to his ship, but Thorgils to the All-Thing, and came not thither until men were going to the courts. Then Ásmund the Grey-haired challenged the defence for the blood suit on the slaying of Thorgils Maxson. Thorgils went to the court and offered Weregild for the slaying. If thereby Thorgeir might become free of guilt, he put forth defence in the suit whether they had no free catch on all common foreshores. The lawman was asked if this was lawful defence. Skapti was the lawman and backed Ásmund for the sake of their kinship. He said this was law if they were equal men, but said the bonders had a right to take before bachelors. Ásmund said that Thorgils had offered an even sharing to the foster brothers, in so much of the whale as was uncut when they came there too, and therewith the way of the defence was closed against them. Now Thorstein and his kin followed up the suit with much eagerness, and naught was good to them but they that Thorgils should make guilty. Thorgils saw that one of the two things was to be done, either to set on them with many men, not knowing what might be gained thereof, or to suffer them to go on as they would, and whereas Thorgir had been got on board a ship, Thorgils let the suit go on unheeded. Thorgir was outlawed, but for Thormod was taken weregild, and he to be quit. By this blood suit Thorstein and Ásmund were deemed to have waxed much, and now men ride home from the thing. Some men would hold talk that Thorgils had lightly backed the case, but he heeded little talk, and let them say thereon that they would. But when Thorgir heard of this outlawry, he said, "Fain am I that those who had made me an outlaw should have full pay for this, ere all be over." There was a man called Gaut Sleitason. He was akin to Thorgils Maxson. Gaut had made ready to get in his ship wherein Thorgir was set to sail. He bristled up against Thorgir and showed mighty ill will against him and went about scowling. When the chapmen found this, they thought it far from safe that both should sail on one ship. Thorgir said he heeded out how much soever Gaut would have brought upon him. Still it was agreed that Gaut should take himself off from the ship, and whereupon he went north into the upper settlements, and that time naught happened between him and Thorgir, but out of this sprang up between them ill blood, as matters showed after.